Yeah, you're exactly right. We work with all these neurosurgeons and, like the chair of internal medicine. These are like big deal doctors with like 10 degrees, and they're very intense and intimidating. But I just like to remember that at the end of the day, they're people too. Um, and I treat them with respect. I call them Doctor so and so, and I, take the time to read about their work and do research into what what the meeting's about instead of just going in blind. But throwing in those little tidbits about asking about their kids if they happen to mention it, and then remembering that for the next time. Those things are important. Um, and I mean, even now, I don't work at the hospital anymore, but like I said, I've built some really good relationships with some of the doctors there.
Throughout this current run at Johns Hopkins, I've been blessed to work with so many brilliant people. And when you work a job with people that you really enjoy, it really helps. A job that you may not think is your dream job, it really helps you fall in love with it. When you get to work with people that you just enjoy going and seeing every day, essentially they become like family. Well, today's guest is somebody whom I work with for almost 3 years, and that is my good friend Chanapa. Chanapa and I spent a great amount of time laughing, making GIFs. We even traveled to North Carolina for a conference. She would leave our team to go to the university, where she stayed there for a few years. And after not being able to take it anymore, she finally left. So we talk about that. We talk about why she left the university, her next venture. We also have a good discussion about systematic racism that you can face in the workplace. And she gives advice on how to deal with it. So ladies and gentlemen, up next, my interview / conversation with Chanapa. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, on this episode, I have somebody who recently, about a little over a year ago, left me in my position. She went on to another part of Johns Hopkins Medicine, and now she's since moved on, and we're going to get into all of that. And that is the one and only Chanapa Tantibanchachai. I messed it up, did I?
No, you got it. Just keep it in there. It's like a funny non-blooper.
Oh, hey. How you feeling today, Chanapa?
Great. I'm really honored that you're having me on. Thanks.
Thank you. Man, it's what, 4 years ago we met, and one of the things I always talk about this, and I'll say it publicly. I knew you were going to be cool when we met, and the first thing you said was, "Come on in my office. Let's sit down and talk." And I said, you know what? This is somebody I'm a talker, so I knew that you would be a talker, and we was gonna get along just fine.
Yes, that was a really good, relationship. I remember you always coming in, nearly every day and with my like lights off because I like it like a dungeon in there and we just talk shit. So,
Yeah, it was like, and one of the things is we connected on was just different things, culture, um, being able to speak about things that's happening in the world, unfortunate things, just the way we grew up. So, and like I said, we'll get into all that. How you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm actually in between jobs, like you mentioned earlier. So I'm actually technically not. I'm unemployed right now, so it's great. I'm just sitting around.
Well, unemployed, but let's start from the beginning. When did you decide that you wanted to get into the science writing business?
I would say towards the it wasn't actually until towards the end of college. So I went into college, thinking that I wanted to be a doctor. I think for a couple of reasons, because I was good at science as far as I knew, and that seemed to make sense. But I think largely because My parents immigrated here from Thailand, and we didn't have a lot of friends or family. So you don't really, you can't be what you don't see. So I didn't know a lot of like career paths that were out there. But like in Asian households, that doctors, engineers, and lawyers are like top tier jobs in their eyes. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll become a doctor. But I went through college. I majored in biology, and it was all right. But I never really enjoyed my science classes as much as I loved writing, like my English classes, and I did some internships and just little things in college to keep me writing as kind of like like an enjoyable extracurricular activity for myself. And then so it wasn't until I think like the end of college that I was taking organic chemistry, and I hated it so much. And I was like, I can't do another, 4 to 10 years, if you become a doctor, you do residency and all that, just focus on this type of stuff. I hate it. But I love writing, and I was really lucky I had an advisor that was, really focused on different aspects of science, like not just hard science, but how you communicate science as well. So she kind of opened my eyes to the possibility that you could do that for a living.
Wow. So what made you, so you said you like science, so that's why you chose that. How long did you were you how much, I guess, through the course of action while you're in school, how much did you have to change up? Did you have to like change your major, or were you already on the path to getting into the science writing field?
So I didn't change my major. So I graduated with the biology degree, and then I actually stayed and did my master's in biology as well. But I had done so many like side activities related to writing about science, um, that it just kind of made sense that I had the training in biology, but I had the experience in writing about it. So then I just started looking for jobs in that realm. So it's kind of like a natural slide into science writing.
Wow. So you talk about that part, and science writing. Let's just call it for what it is. You know, you and I, we have a lot of honest conversations. Um, you're a minority in a lot of these groups, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's it like a lot of times to be, the only Asian or one of the few Asians in the room that's a science writer, and just trying to navigate that space?
It's real hard, for sure. I think science writing in particular, like a lot of fields, right? It's kind of there's like a pipeline problem. I think a lot of minorities have, uh, or at least, and then in my immigrant family, the priority is getting a job that pays well and you can support yourself and your family. And like my parents sacrificed so much for me to be here, for them to be here. It's just always a priority. Like, what am I gonna do that makes it worth it for everything they've given up? And that includes like a practical job that makes sense. So I think a lot of minorities don't go into science writing because it's not very clear cut and there's not a huge promise of good pay and stability. So that's like one problem. And then once you do get in the room, there's no one there that looks like you, so no one can relate to your struggles. Then you face a lot of discrimination along the way, and there's like a lot of loneliness. Like there's no one really to talk to about it.
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, I never heard of science writing being a career till I went to Johns Hopkins. I obviously come back from a background in sports and news, and you hear about, that you can get jobs writing for different websites or different fields, but I just always thought when it came to health and science that you just went to the you went to the newspaper or you went to the TV station and they say, "Hey, this is your beat," and that's how you got into it. I didn't realize that you have full science writers writing for different organizations, different institutions.
Yeah, there's like a whole spectrum to it. I mean, even people that I know that understand, that science reporting is a thing, they don't realize that science writing at, like at Johns Hopkins is a thing. They think that a researcher does research and then a reporter somehow finds out about it and writes a news article. They don't realize there's a lot of steps in between. So, like when I was there working with you, I was a senior media relations representative, and the bulk of my job was reading those research manuscripts and distilling it. Say a research manuscript's like 30 pages, you turn it into an 800-word thing, and then it goes to reporters. So there's a whole long process to getting science news out there to the world.
Yes, Lord. Since you left, I've written a couple press releases.
Ah, how was it?
Oh man, you just took me back. First of all, with that reaction, folks. A lot of times when I would have a venting session in Chanapa's office, or vice versa, that would be the soundbite. We should have made that a soundbite. We got gifs out there. We just never made sound bites. Um, it's challenging. When we created, in case you missed it, I had to read the press releases deeper and try to pick out something to how to tell a story, but that was already tough. Then when I got assigned a beat, pulmonary in particular, having to read that manuscript, shout out to our assistant director, Marin. She really showed me how to tackle it and sat down with me, but it's tough. And I remember after doing that, I went to our friend Rachel and Vanessa and said, I respect your job. I always respected your job, but I have a different level of respect for it now, considering what I just did.
That's funny now that you've done it. Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize, it's a lot of work to read those papers and like even think about them and try to understand them. But then it requires so much people skills, because then you got to work with your clients, so at Hopkins, the doctors, to go back and forth and come to agreement on how you're gonna, basically translate their years of work into one article.
Yeah. Now, before we get to Hopkins, before you came, you was at the University of Utah,
Yes.
associate science writer. Can you talk about that experience? Is this your first job out of your master's program?
Yeah, I was still doing my master's when I started working in Utah. I was finishing up my thesis, so at that point, you're just writing a really long paper, not taking classes anymore. And I landed that job, and I made a deal with my advisors in school that I'll come back and defend the paper um, in a few months, but I got to move to Utah to work first. But yeah, it was my first job out of college, or I guess still in college. And one thing I want to bring up is I read somewhere really early on, I think in my college career, that women don't apply for jobs they think they're unqualified for, that they're too critical of themselves because they don't think they match the job description exactly. And so I took that really seriously and applied for a lot of jobs that on paper I probably wasn't qualified for. The job at Utah, I actually had applied for a senior science writer job, and I interviewed for it, and they didn't give it to me, but they liked me enough that they made that associate science writer position for me. So I think it really goes to show that you just gotta always shoot your shot.
Yeah, always shoot your shot. And I'm glad you said that. A lot of people who listen to the show are college students who are looking, for inspiration. And, I told you when I started this, I'm blessed to be connected to a wealth of great people. And I wanted to share my network with the world. And so that's the reason why I was like, I got to have Chanapa on, because I know your story and I believe that somebody else could learn a lot from you, especially the process.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah.
So after Utah, you made a decision, packed up your bags, put it, loaded up your car, drove cross country to the great city of Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah.
Tell me that process.
Oh man. So I was at Utah for a while, like a year and a half, and I started doing senior level work, but for entry level pay, and I wasn't I wasn't too happy about that. So I applied for jobs all over the country, just kind of shoot my shot, shot at my shot, whatever. And
Obi.
yeah, and Marin and Audrey are fearless leaders. Audrey's not at Hopkins anymore, but she was part of the hiring team then, and you know how great she is.
Mhm.
Really took a chance on me and gave me, offered me a senior media rep position that, I mean, I couldn't turn down. And I remember I told my friend when I was thinking about moving across the country, and he said, if you're serious about your career, you'll do this. And I did.
Wow, that's it's always good to have that friend. That word, those words right there. You know what I mean? You can already tell. Like it was a challenge. It was You're used to these challenges, and he challenged you. How serious are you? And obviously, you made a jump to a senior, um, it's what senior media rep position. Am I correct?
Mhm.
And the titles. I look. It's like, hey, we all work together. But can you talk about some of the challenges you had within like the first year and some of the ups you had in the first year of moving from across the country and in the job itself?
Yeah, yeah. Well, personally, moving across the country, uprooting your life is really difficult. And I was dating Eric. You know, Eric. We're engaged now, but we have been
Mhm.
dating 3 years or so then. And, we didn't break up, but I said, I got to take this job, we'll figure it out. So I actually came out to Baltimore without him. So that was really tough. And I didn't have any family or friends out here. So it's really hard to just kind of establish yourself, especially as an adult. It's harder to make friends. You're not in school. You have to make friends at work. Um, so that was really difficult for the first few months. I felt really lonely, but luckily, you and all our amazing team made that go away real fast. In terms of the job, yeah, the environment it was a huge culture shock. At the University of Utah, it's very laid back. You can work from home really casually, like people bike in at like 10. And I think a lot of faculty members work there for the quality of life. You can go for a hike during your lunch hour. It's just a beautiful place. People are there to relax and hike and bike and do outdoors things. At Hopkins, every doctor wants to be in the New York Times. Things move so quickly and there's just so much more work to do. So it was a huge learning curve to adjust to that pace.
One of the things that I always commended you on, and getting a beat and doing media pitching later, I really see how hard it is that you were able to land the New York Times, CNN almost on a regular basis. And I remember, shout out to our friend Archie, who has left us as well, left the company, folks. She would always say that because Archie did a lot of the reporting, and she saw a lot of what went out, what came in, and she would always say, Chanapa's really good at landing landing top level media companies. How did you find that niche to be able to do such a thing? Teach the people, teach me. As they say, asking for a friend.
Give you my secret sauce. Yeah, I would say it's largely two things. I would say it's having really good relationships with your clients. So in this case, the clients are the faculty members whose work you're promoting, because honestly, yes, they want to be in New York Times, but they don't realize that they need to reach out to you and tell you about stuff on the regular, in advance. So you have to really build a strong relationship with them so that they remember you and tell you about those things so you can actually promote it. So, me, I'd show up, I'd always have my meetings with faculty and I'd become friends with them. I'd bother them on Twitter. I'm still friends with, a decent amount of them now after I left. It's been what, a year and a half, 2 years now.
Hmm.
So keeping those relationships alive and being really genuine about it. And also just reading the news all the time. I read the news every day, and especially lately it's been extra stressful, but you got to do that to know what works. And so then at that by doing that, you know what stuff to promote and what's going to go viral.
Yeah, that's just man, that's so true. I want you to touch on building relationships and being authentic because even though a lot of people may not be into, and I should say my not people, a lot of my audience may not be into the medical field as much as they are in the sports. I learned that doctors and researchers can be almost as intimidating as athletes. You know, some of the if you have a doctor who does brain surgery and he's like the top brain surgeon, well, he's going to have a certain swag and confidence to him. The same way as trying to build a relationship with, say, a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant. So, can you just talk about? Because the reason why I say this is because I do believe that with your skill set, if you were a sports writer, you would be building those type of relationships. It wouldn't be with the 12th player on the bench. It would be, tell Eric that I said that you would have a close relationship with Donovan Mitchell.
He's giving a thumbs up. He's like,
um, but how like what would you say is like key in doing that? How do you I know you said being authentic and being real, but what's like sort of the best way to go about that?
yeah. I always tell people, I've been asked this a couple times. It starts off with a lot of reading the room. There's some faculty you meet for the first time, and you can tell they just want to, get straight to business. They don't want to chit chat about where you had just been before this meeting or where you're going next. So you kind of adjust yourself accordingly based on how they like to communicate. You meet people where they are. And I think that's being, I think some people might say like that's not being authentic, but I mean that's just how you build relationships, right? You're not the same with every single one of your friends. You have to adjust to how they like to be communicated with and how what's going to work most efficiently for your relationship. So doing that, and I think going in and not being intimidated, like I think yeah, you're exactly right. We work with all these neurosurgeons and, like the chair of internal medicine. These are like big deal doctors with like 10 degrees, and they're very intense and intimidating. But I just like to remember that at the end of the day, they're people too. Um, and I treat them with respect. I call them doctor so and so, and I, take the time to read about their work and do research into what they're, what the meeting's about instead of just going in blind. But throwing in those little tidbits about, asking about their kids if they happen to mention it, and then remembering that for the next time. Those things are important. Um, and I mean, even now, I don't work at the hospital anymore, but like I said, I've built some really good relationships with some of the doctors there. And it's not like I have a calendar reminder for myself to reach out to so and so every quarter. But if I just think of them or I see that they've published something, I'll ping them and say, "Hey, read this, loved it, miss you." Just little things like that, just keeping it alive.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Obviously I see you tweet and engage with them and sometimes you post stuff and they engage with you. How do I'm a big supporter of women empowerment. I believe that and it also comes from I've always told you this. I was I grew up in a family full of strong black women. That would then change to, or I should say, morph into the workplace. My best managers, the best duo set, I put this on the record, has always been Audrey and Marin.
Hmm.
Best managers I've ever had.
Same, same here.
And yeah, and, it's a personal thing. And I've learned so much at the strength and watching them have a no take, don't take no shit, excuse my language attitude. That's very rare curse on my own podcast. But as somebody who was working, you're a senior media rep, not necessarily a manager or a director, but you still were tasked with responsibilities of going in there. You said reading the room, but a lot of times commanding attention and letting people know and being in a position of authority, because you ultimately decide if it gets written or not. They want to put their research, but if they come at you sideways, you're like, all right, I'll write it, but I might not hit up my
I'll
friends at
remember.
the yeah, I might not hit up my friends from the New York Times or
Mhm.
CNN, you know. But how did you go in there and really command that respect?
Yeah, no, I've definitely been tested time and time again, and I don't, this is anecdotal, but I would say, if I were a white man, I don't think I'd be tested as often as I've been. That's anything from the number of times you get pushback when you say no on something to how frequently clients will try to escalate stuff because they don't believe in your authority, they don't believe in your decision making. And I think this is a skill that Marin has helped me hone quite a bit, but it's really knowing how to stand your ground in the most professional way, to be like, no matter how much you scream at me, and I've been yelled at by some of our clients, I'm gonna keep saying the same thing. I'm not gonna budge just because you're upset. And I think along the way that gains you respect because they see, oh, she knows what she's talking about, and she's willing to stand up for it.
Now, how do you when you get yelled at, how do you bounce back, and how do you so in TV, there's always the saying, you mess up today, it's forgot about because you move on. You got to produce a whole new another show. But one of the things I learned in science is some things take longer to process. You know what I mean? I didn't realize it could take 30 days to write a press release. I thought,
Mhm.
with an article, you get your sources, boom, you write it, post it, you move on to the next thing. So it's something that's more long term. How do you cope with that without going as far as, letting that sting for so long?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'll be honest. The very first time I truly got yelled at, like on the phone by a client, I cried. I mean, not to, I waited till I got off the phone first, but I cried because it's hard to not take personally when someone is, berating essentially the work that you're doing and your decisions. But I've learned to take a step back, take a walk around the office, just not I don't have to engage with the situation right away. Taking a breather helps me calm down. And then it's hard, but just trying to remember not to take it personally because it's work and these people, trying to understand where you're coming from, that it's really their babies, the work that they've done, the research they're trying to promote. So trying to understand why they would be so passionate. That was a nice PR way of putting why they'd be so mad and rude about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
you don't have to be PR-ish on here.
yeah, yeah. It's called pivoting away. Now trying to understand where they're coming from, and then I try to respond to them accordingly. Obviously, I understand. That you are so eager to put this out because you've spent so much time on this research. But here's what I'm dealing with, because I think a lot of times they don't realize that a press release can take 4+ weeks. They don't know that there's 3 editors involved and you have to fill a form out to get those edits. Even they too think, oh, I talked to Chanapa, she wrote a story, why isn't it out in a week? And they also don't know your workload, and you don't have to vent to them. Be like, I'm working on 20 press releases and I don't, do you understand the pressure I'm under? You don't do that. But I think if you, it takes time and it takes a lot of effort to explain to them politely, like, this is what we're up against. I understand what you're saying, but I'm doing my best. That approach has always gotten them to calm down and create a better relationship in the long run.
Yeah. Talk about the time you first, I guess to say the first time you got a New York Times article? The first time you got the cover.
Oh man, I don't. I feel bad because I don't remember which one.
Oh, excuse me.
No, I feel like it's been so long. I don't remember. No, I just no, it feels really good. What, New York Times or whatever big hit I've gotten, it feels like, my gauge on the news is accurate. It feels like I'm a good writer and that someone picked up on what I wrote. And it feels really good because the faculty member, your client, is very happy and gives you that recognition of the work you did to get them in the New York Times. So whenever those things happened, it made all the hard work and all the getting yelled at, whatever, kind of melt away and kept me going.
Yeah, reason why I brought it up because I remember seeing a lot of the in papers in your office.
Yeah.
So, when you look back at your time with us, what would you say was your highlight, the highlight of your career as a senior media rep for Johns Hopkins Medicine?
Oh, the highlight of my career. I would say, and I hope he's listening, I would say working with Joe Saccharin. Because, Joe, so I don't know if your viewers are listening, Joe Saccharin is a trauma surgeon at Hopkins Medicine. And he started, I think, the same month that I started working at Hopkins. So he was really new too. And I remember the first media request I got for him was from the local paper from the town he had moved from.
Hmm.
They wanted a quote from a patient whose life he saved, and he didn't even have like a faculty profile picture on his, on the in directory yet. And he was so kind, and I was just like, "Who's this guy?" But Joe Saccharin turned out to be, he's a trauma surgeon, but not only that, he's been shot in the neck and survived it, and trained with the surgeons that saved him. He has this whole like lifetime situation going on. And we did a lot of stuff together. We did a CNN profile together. So I spent a lot of time with him, with all the TV crews that were interested in him. So it's twofold because, there was a lot of success in promoting him, but also he's just such like a kind person that he was easy to work with. Like you wanted to work with Joe. You know that Joe's just a good guy, so it makes work easy.
I'm
So
a,
I would
I'm a,
say that's the highlight.
I'm gonna add to that. The situation with for new listeners out there. If you didn't look at any of the graphics and you can't tell by my voice, I'm a black male living in America, and he reached out to me, and I have to say it meant a lot just to see how I was doing with everything going on. And he said, even though he has immigrant parents, he looks like a white man. So some of the things that, some of the racial injustices that you and I may be subjected to, not so much for him, but for him to take time to do that. He trusted me to come down. I think I told you about this too. He was giving grand rounds at where the same hospital which he was treated at. And he asked me to come get some videos and pictures. And a lot of times you have people when they're around their peers and stuff, they may act a different way. Not
Hmm.
him. You could see that the same way, the same relationships that you and I had built with him, other people had with him. And
Yeah,
you could just imagine it was as if a red carpet was laid out for him.
yeah.
So that was pretty cool. Um, so you made a decision
We're getting
in
into it now.
yeah, you made a decision in, what was it, 2018, November 2018, well, I guess
Yeah,
October, that you was ready to do something different. Can you just talk about the process and ultimately, what made you change it and say, all right, it's time to move on?
man. Well, I'll start off the bat that it was a mistake leaving you guys. So I just want to set the tone there. But no, I think the workload was so intense, and it was getting to a point where I was covering like at least 10 departments, and writing, 10 press releases, dealing with 60, 70 media requests a month. And I'd come home, and that job is 24/7. You work at the doctor's schedule and the reporter's schedule, so you get calls at 9 p.m. and radiology is yelling at you because you gave a CNN interview to urology instead. And you're like, man, I'm trying to wind down and go to bed here. I get home and I just stare at the wall and I'd be so drained. And that's kind of what got me looking at other jobs. um, but then I got an offer to work on the university side of Hopkins. So, for people listening, there's Hopkins, the health system where Brian's at and where I was at, covering all the clinical stuff. And then there's like School of Public Health. They have their own communications office. And I left to go to the university office, which covers things like engineering and physics and like biology. So I left November 2018 to go work on the university side.
Yeah, so yeah, I remember. Shout out to you and friend Bia. Y'all brought donuts in for everybody.
Yeah, too many. We overestimated for sure.
So you mean to tell me I could have took like 3 or 4 on my way to Chicago?
Yeah, there were like 3 or 4 like at least boxes left over. I was like,
I was trying not to be greedy. That was the thing that we would do a lot of times. One thing we definitely ate a lot. I When we hit 10,000 followers on Twitter, I brought in donuts and I was trying to like hide them because I knew I wanted the team to get them first.
that's funny.
Yeah, but of course, somebody at the front desk had to pick up the phone. Brian just brought in donuts. I'm like, really?
I was like, come on.
I guess I should have waited and went at lunchtime, and went at lunchtime and came back and brought them.
No, we ate a lot. I got my first chicken boss with you, remember?
Yeah. Which one? Wait, was it
It was Northeast.
Northeast? Okay, I couldn't remember if it was Northeast or the other place that's gone now. What was the place we used to always get the Groupon for?
Oh, man, I
Andy's.
forgot.
Uh,
Andy's, yeah, Andy's down the
yeah,
street.
he's gone now, and I was like, God dang it.
Yeah.
Those definitely clutch. But we the best part is, even though you left, we were able to create, lifelong friendships and bonds, and essentially I always said like it was truly a family. If you look on, I have a Google Home, and in my rotation is actually a picture of you, me, and Marin when we were at the Christmas party. And
Yeah.
there's multiple pictures from like the Nobel and all that other stuff. But talk about your time with the university and some of the challenges over there.
Yeah, so I ended up staying at the university for just a year and a half. I actually just quit. We're recording July 30th. I quit on the 10th. So I didn't stay very long. And I faced a number of issues there, but largely I would say a lot of like systemic racism, to be blunt. I
Mhm.
even told them that. And Brian, when I was with you guys, I was doing work on the level of taking those CNN crews through the OR, working
Mhm.
with Joe on those high profile, high caliber things. I was, writing all, I could handle a lot and the quality of my work was excellent. And then I came to the university and I got a really disproportionate amount of like housekeeping work assigned to me compared to other people. So then all of a sudden I'm doing things like, Chanapa, can you make this Excel sheet? Or can you organize this Google Doc? And I don't think it's cocky to say like I was capable of doing more and I wanted to do more. But, I was uh, one of only 2 non-support staff that were people of color in that office. I
Mhm.
think that says a lot.
How do you deal with that in the workplace? How do you stay sane, especially in the state of the country right now? When you think about everything that's going on, it would be nice to say by the time this podcast comes out, things would be different. But That would be, it's funny. I was listening to Michelle Obama and Barack Obama's Michelle Obama's podcast featuring Barack Obama, and she kept
Yeah,
she kept calling him, say he was so optimistic about everything. That yes, we can, man.
so funny.
And so, I would like to have that type of optimism, but in the event we don't, how did you deal with that, especially as we saw a shift in the country at the unfortunate murders? Can't call it an accident. um can't call it anything else. The unfortunate murders of Breonna Taylor, who still her killers still haven't been arrested, and murders of George Floyd, whose killers still haven't been convicted. How did you deal with that, being in a place where you're dealing with systematic racism?
It is damn hard. I don't know I'll ever have a good answer for it, but yeah, it drains you every day. You wake up knowing the value you have in yourself and what you're capable of doing. And, the people that are in power don't see it and don't allow you to perform at your fullest potential. And when, eventually, I spoke up pretty frequently, and I spoke up at first, doing that kind of couched language, doing it in the socially acceptable way. You're not going to come straight out and say you're racist because
Mhm.
of white fragility, right? Like you got to play their game. And I say, oh, I have the bandwidth to do this type of work moving forward. I would love it if you involved me in these projects that you have not involved me in. Really interested in expanding my portfolio, blah, blah, blah. And when that didn't work, I was pretty blunt with them pretty frequently. I said, there's a pattern, a systemic pattern here that you need to address. Like, you have to recognize it first, and then you have to do something about it, because this type of bias, takes conscious, consistent effort to combat. And nothing came of it, obviously, which is why I left. And I have a great opportunity ahead of me.
Mhm.
But, I would say, as a minority, you're always doing these types of mental calculations, right? Like, is it worth saying anything, and how aggressive should I be? What's the return on investment of me speaking up? Like, are there gonna be consequences? Is me speaking up gonna actually make it worse for me or improve things? And I was at the point where I don't think it could have gotten any worse. And I think speaking up is always valuable. And I've been reading Ta-Nehisi Coates this past week, and he wrote something that really spoke to me. He said, even if you're standing and the waves are crashing down on you, and no one can hear you, there's meaning in just screaming at the waves, even if they drown you out. Like, screaming and saying your truth has meaning on its own. So I really believe in that. You just got to speak up for yourself, even if sadly nothing might happen.
Wow, that's deep. That's
That
deep.
was through Ta-Nehisi out there.
Yeah. So it's different, but it's more parallel. I just finished reading this book called Staying in the Game, the playbook for beating workplace sexual harassment, by my friend Adrian Lawrence. And the thing I learned in that book was, when it comes to sexual harassment, it's not just touching, it's not just making comments. And sexual harassment is never done because of sex, it's done because of power. It's
Mhm.
done to keep you at a certain level. And a lot of things with racism, I've learned, is it's not always direct. It's not always somebody, for me, it's not somebody coming up straight and calling me the N-word.
Yep.
It's not somebody going at you and just talking about the way you look. It's not letting you do things, not listening to you while you're trying to speak up about something, not valuing your opinion. That's what people got to understand. So I was, you know, I'm glad you did speak up, and quite frankly, you being my friend, I'm glad you got out of there. It sucked that you left us, but I'm definitely glad you got out of there. What would you say when you look back at your career so far? Because you're still, still fairly young, but what would you say was the glass breaking moment? The moment you broke through and realized I'm really good at what I do.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say probably getting the job with you guys, that senior media rep role. That because like I said, I was working that entry level position before, and it was my first job. And I was writing press releases, but they also had me doing things like writing little student profiles and, making an inter-department newsletter. And, it made me feel like, is this all, will I have to do this for 10 more years before I could do the work I really want to do that I know I'm good at? And the fact that Audrey and Marin saw in me what I felt in myself, across the country and gave me that chance, that really made me feel like, wow, okay, like I can do this. This is this is happening.
And for people out there, especially, in our field, in all media fields, it's not abnormal to move across the country for a job. So what kind of advice would you give to people, or something that you wish you would have known when you were moving, just in that process?
I would say keep that energy. When you move somewhere at the very beginning, you have all this energy. You look up all the things in your new city that you're gonna do, and all these meetups you want to join. But it quickly, life grinds at you, and you start working, and you come home, and it's 6, and you don't want to go to that meetup, or you don't want to check out that park that everyone talks about. I would say try to keep that energy for as long as possible, because once you let it go, you're not you're missing out on a lot. You're missing out on, Baltimore is a great city, and I've discovered so much. It has a terrible, like, people give it such a bad rep, but it's a beautiful city. I'm so glad I moved here, and I've been here 4 years now, and I'm still like learning new things every day, and I feel like probably too slowly, because for a while I just got so caught up in the daily grind of life, and just doing things to pay the bills and go to bed. But yeah, keep that energy and move somewhere and just hit the ground running and meet as many people as you can and do as much as you can.
And before we get out of here, you are the GIF queen on Twitter. I mean, we even went to North Carolina because of your GIFs.
Yeah.
Let the people know where they can follow you.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. My handle is Chanapa_T. I'm very active. I'm about to start at the FDA, so maybe maybe I'll go dark soon, with all my hot takes. But no, I'm on there, and you can follow me for the latest science news, health news, soon to be FDA announcements whenever I get into them, and a lot of sass.
A lot of sass. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Chanapa, as always, it's always a pleasure. I'm glad we got a chance to talk and have this conversation. Like I said, you have a great story, and I want people to hear it. I want people to be able to understand that, hey, you're thinking about taking that job across country, you could do it. If you are dealing with systematic racism, this is how you handle it. And I appreciate you coming on and taking your time to talk about this.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. And I'll just leave off to cap all that, to summarize all that. But if you want other people to invest in you, you gotta, make that investment in yourself first. You gotta believe in yourself. So that's probably my hottest tip.
Y'all heard what she said, folks. Invest in yourself. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was my interview with Chanapa. I really hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Next week, I speak with somebody who I recently connected with via social media during the pandemic, and that is the one and only Miss Keisha Swafford. Keisha is a writer and a sports journalist, so very excited to get a chance to talk to her about her journey. So make sure you tune in. Remember, folks, season 2, we coming back bigger and better than ever before. Do not let anybody set up a ceiling that you can't break through. This podcast was recorded and edited by B Waters Productions. The music by Hypno Beats. Make sure you follow him at Hypno_Beats with a Z on Instagram.